This is an age of disruption, of profound revolutionary change.
What we're really asking ministers is to empower the ambassadors.
The only thing that you really push forth is the truth.
You don't see many women represented when it comes to the decisions as to how to handle the pandemic.
Hello and welcome again to the next panel. I'm Bartosz. For those of us who are just joining online, I am a reporter at Politico covering agriculture and food. This session will focus on innovation, particularly looking at it through the lens of the new genomic techniques, gene-edited seeds, the proposal that the Commission recently published and that is currently being discussed in the Council and in the European Parliament. We have three speakers joining us, two of them online. With me in the room is Peter Kearns. He's a director of Sustainable Food Systems and Innovation at Reimagine Europa, and he's the former principal administrator at OECD. And online we have Claire Berry. She's the Deputy Director General at DG Sante, so the Directorate of the European Commission that's in charge of the new genomic techniques file. And we also have...
Hi, good afternoon.
We also have a socialist MEP, French MEP, Christophe Clergot, who's recently, a few months ago, I think, replaced a long-standing MEP from France, Eric Andrieu. And Christophe will be the shadow rapporteur on the NGT file in the European Parliament. So we have quite really a strong lineup here. I want to maybe start with the audience, a show of hand, who's happy with the Commission's proposal on new genomic techniques? Who thinks it's a good direction forward? Fewer than, I think it's less than half of the room. So maybe Claire, if you can tell us why the Commission decided to go this way, to propose this, and what is the role of innovation of we heard earlier speakers during earlier panels talking about topics like agroforestry, like local small farming approaches, independence, but NGTs, innovation, where are we heading? Where is European agriculture heading? What role do these kind of technologies play?
Okay, thank you very much, Bartosz. So I'll take it that the glass is half full and not half empty on the basis of what you just said with the show of hands. So maybe first of all, the more general question that you put, and I think it already came up in the previous panel, that there are a number of different innovative techniques that we need to look at. It's not about really sort of picking out and ranking different tools from the Commission's perspective. We think really we need to use all the tools that we can that are available, and all the innovative technologies in synergy. So we have, of course, the fact, and Mihai said it very clearly, that we need broadband in rural areas. And then we need the specifics around precision farming, making sure that the technology is available to different farmers in a tailor-made way. But if I can then just to say a few words about plant breeding, as far as we're concerned, the reason why we've made this proposal is because we see a great potential here with gene editing to deliver the improved varieties that will support the objectives and challenges that we have in climate change and in environmental diversity. We see the NGTs really, obviously they're different from GMOs because they don't involve foreign GNA in the plants. It's an editing, so we think the biology is different. But we think the potential is great because these techniques can add speed and they can add new possibilities. And as part of the impact assessment that we did, we see that there is already, I think, out there quite some potential in terms of different types of crops. And I saw it myself actually when I was in Estonia recently, blight-resistant tomatoes being grown, mudial-resistant barley being, not being grown yet, sorry, being in the labs. And being developed. So we've made this proposal really because we think that the existing regulatory framework needs to be adapted because gene editing is different. And we need a regulatory framework that will promote innovation and will promote innovation for smaller companies too, and will promote innovation which will help us meet the sustainability challenges. And we're trying to channel the technology in that way so that we can really harness it for public benefit.
Peter, Reimagine Europa has been conducting research and looking at the state of affairs with NGTs, with technology. What do you think of what Claire Berry was just saying?
I can't think of a word that she said that I would disagree with. But I would like to come back to your opening gambit, as it were, who is happy with the proposal. And you said that half the people, or maybe a bit less, had their hands up. There's a different way of thinking about this. Nobody is completely happy with a complex proposed regulation like that. And it just depends whether you are looking from the perspective of what's good or what's not so good, what could have been improved. The way I would look at it is to say it's probably one of the best deals that could have been done for those people who are interested in seeing these new innovations, and particularly in the area of genetic technologies and NGTs. So it's a good compromise, I think, at least the way I look at it. And I think that's probably what a lot of people think. Just to agree with, or just to reflect again on one of the things that Claire was saying, it's one of many innovations, and I think probably I would agree very strongly there are other innovations that will be important in agriculture, both for sustainability means, but well, for the future of farming in general, efficiency and so on.
Christoph, do you agree with this kind of idea that it's not good or bad, it's part of the toolbox? And I've seen that at a recent organic farming summit, you were also alluding to, Claire Berry was quite adamant, these are not GMOs, this is a different type of technology, different process that doesn't introduce foreign DNA. But you said, I think if I'm not misquoting you totally, you were saying something along the lines of, I'm glad in France we're not talking about NGTs, we're talking about new GMOs. Can you weigh in on that?
Okay, good morning to everybody. Thanks for the invitation. Perhaps I will be the bad guy in this debate, I don't know. First of all, I am a socialist, so I am in favor of science and innovation. But there is a strong difference between what is science in the hand of researchers or what is techniques in the hands of firms. And we are talking about potential. We are talking about promise. But there is a few products on the market and a few products in the pipeline near to the market. So we have to be very cautious. Very cautious, perhaps in one first direction you ever advocated, but we need a systemic approach of sustainability, transition, and transformation of agriculture. There is no one tool which can be the solution. Second element is that any technique has a cost and brings shifts in agricultural economical model. So we have to understand who are the winners, who are the losers. And in the last decades, we had experiences with GMOs because it's different techniques, but it's new GMOs. It's legally new GMOs. And in the past, there was no good promise, no good news with GMOs. So we have to be to have strong information, strong guarantees that these new techniques could really bring to a progress for farmers and for society. And in this sense, it is very difficult for me to understand how you can introduce a new fine, a new regulation with a lower level of risk assessment, with a lower level of consumer information, and with a lower level of free choice for farmers and lower level of protection for organic farming or for other signs of qualities or traditional sectors. So I think we have to improve this text. There is a lot of elements with, according to me, no sufficient scientific roots, and a lot of elements in which we need to improve the level of protection of society and citizens.
Claire, you were mentioning or I think everyone here mentioned systemic approaches. We've seen in the Agriculture and Fisheries Council quite a positive response from a number of ministers to this proposal. And then if we look at a proposal that came out just a year before, the pesticides regulation, the discussion was drastically different. Is the idea of the farm to fork, I suppose, was for that to set European agriculture on this systemic transition. Is that happening, or is the fact that we've had this kind of pick and choose approach? We like the NGTs, we don't like the SUR, we like this, we don't like that. Some proposals seem to not come out, are possibly dead. Do you think NGTs can be part of the systemic transition if they're not going in tangent with all these other proposals that the Commission proposed?
Well, yeah, I think you're right, Bartosz, to remind us that we did in Farm to Fork take this systemic approach, where we have to look at the whole chain. Obviously, all the proposals couldn't come out at the same time because it wouldn't be possible to process them all at the same time. But I think this is part of the solution. And obviously, in a way, it's complementary to the efforts that we want to make in terms of reducing pesticides, because there are some varieties which are in development which would allow, as I was mentioning before, to use lower levels of fungicides or lower levels of pesticides. So yes, I mean, it's about putting all the pieces of the jigsaw together, right? But I'd like to just come back, if I may, very briefly on something that Christophe said, which is, I think, this is all very much still based on the precautionary principle. We are not throwing caution to the wind. On the contrary, the purpose is to try and have a regulatory framework which is proportionate and which fits with the risks. So the question of the category of NGTs that we put into what we call category 1, which are similar to conventionally bred plants, on the basis of science that we have from EFSA and elsewhere, it's clear that there are no greater risks with these seeds and plants than there would be with any conventionally bred seeds and plants. And we were very cautious as well about, you've probably seen, everyone who's read it will see that there are two categories, the category 1 and then the category 2, which are treated very much like or similar to the GMO approach in terms of labeling and traceability and so on. But those which go into category 1, really we based on science, and we put the threshold in a very, I would say, cautious place in terms of what we put into that category. I mean, Christophe, you said, this is all new. Yes, it is to a certain extent. But I think we very carefully base what we put forward on science, and it is based on the precautionary principle. There will also be monitoring and transparency about the way that the framework will work. So from the Commission's perspective, we think here we are nurturing a new technology. As I said, in the labs, the work is already going on, and I think that Europe needs to benefit from this technology. It shouldn't be just that we take products that are that's developed elsewhere in the world, and our farmers can't benefit from that innovation.
Christophe, I think you were shaking your head at some point. Can you tell us what that was about? It's not easy to have a clear debate on these issues because they are mostly technicals, but also political. For just a few examples, yes, there is two categories, but what are the scientific roots to distinguish these two categories? Claire says that for first category, we are in equivalent situation with traditional plants. It's not our analysis, because even in first category, there is gene transfer, yes, inside what is called the gene pool of a breeder, but it's a very broad approach of gene pool of a breeder. And it's not true to say that anything that could happen in theory inside the gene pool of a breeder, yes, appears in the nature. It's not the reality. So you can't consider that first category is equivalent to traditional plant. We are not in a story for children. We are in reality with consequences on biodiversity, on equilibrium of the economy of farms, on perhaps, I don't know, on health. So when you have no traceability, when you have no information of consumers, when, yes, you forbid the use of these new GMOs in organic farming, but with no traceability, you have no tool to make it possible for organic farming to be protected. And if they have to pay for their own protection, they will be in very difficult economic situations. So all these elements are important elements. And this science, and I will finish on that, this science is very new. And as Claire said, a lot of potential are at the development stage. And we do not know a lot of things about that. So we can't be just confident to the science in the situation in which there is this last month a lot of failures in the disponibility of science, in the attitude of big firms, in other issues like glyphosate. And when I see this event is as Bayer as the main partner, it's a question for me, because Syngenta or Bayer did not play good rules last year when it was about new technologies. And we are going to introduce on the market, on the land, new technologies without a full knowledge about this science and a full evaluation of the technologies. We can't decide on the basis of science in the laboratories. We must decide with an independent eye on what the firms will propose us as product on the market. And it's not at all the same thing.
Peter, weigh in on this, because you have a scientific background, but you've also been looking around at what these different companies. We were mentioning Christoph was mentioning the two big names, but Claire was also referring to smaller companies earlier. What is being developed? Are these unfulfilled promises? Are these ways to capture the food system? The science of it all, in a nutshell, what's your take?
There are so many threads here, I hardly know where to begin. But what I have noticed that in other jurisdictions, now this is an important point, these technologies, NGTs, are under development. There is legislation in very many places in the world, globally. The EU currently is a little bit of an outlier if you compare it to North America, for example, South America, some South American countries, and the Asia-Pacific region. And so this is something that is in development in many places, and Europe is in a big danger of getting left behind. I think Claire said something like that, but I think that's clear. What is also clear in those jurisdictions where there has been a system in place which treats, roughly speaking, roughly equivalent to what the Commission is talking about as Category 1, where that happens and has been happening. I'm thinking of Argentina, some of the other South American countries which have been putting or had a system in place for several years, the United States. There are benefits. There is evidence that these technologies are not something that is used just by big industry. There is evidence that it's also that these technologies are being taken up by smaller plant breeders, SMEs type plant breeders. So this is not something just to do with big industry. That's one thing. Maybe I should leave it at that because I had some other points I was going to make. Maybe I can come back.
One thing I want to throw into the mix is we were mentioning, everyone was mentioning here, organic farming, the freedom of choice for some farmers who don't want to adopt these principles, and the traceability issue. Claire, is this proposal throwing organic farming kind of like a baby out with the bathwater, whatever the expression is?
Definitely not. Definitely not. I mean, as you know, you were referring to farm to fork before, and we've got this 25% target as well for organic farming. So this is very much weighed in the preparation of the proposal, and we have struck a balance. I want to say, Christophe, you said there's no information. That's not right. I mean, there is information under the category 1 as well, because they will be recorded in a database, and there would also be labeling of seeds. So for the organic farmers, in spite of the fact that there were some organic farmers who wanted to be able to use the NGTs in organic farming, we proposed to have a ban on that, because the majority of organic farmers said no, they didn't want it. So we have respected that. I think respected choice, as you say. What this tries to do is to have choice for the conventional farmers, that they can use the products when they've been properly risk assessed, but that they would not be used in organic farming. And there are tools like the labeling of seeds, which would mean that the organic farmers can very clearly distinguish. So we have really struck a balance here, I think, between the interests of all farmers trying to make these tools available, and respecting the organic farmers who are very important. But it's not the only kind of sustainable farming as well. No, I mean, there is more general sustainable farming that we want to promote. But of course, organic is very important for us in Europe, and we want to keep championing organic. As I say, we have the 25% in the farm to fork strategy as well.
One aspect that's kind of creeped out before the Commission came up with this proposal, and now it's also we hear these talks in the Council of ownership. These technologies are always they're expensive to develop, and recouping profits is also essential especially for smaller players. There are questions about patentability of these newly developed varieties, and who will be actually putting the price on this, and who will own the right to own these seeds. I'd like for all of you to weigh in on this, and whether there is a real risk of this kind of consolidation. Small players, they're developing them, but to make money, they might sometimes have to be bought up or paid up, or become part of the bigger industry. We have startups that look to cut a profit, but they also look to recoup their losses. And Claire, maybe starting with you.
Okay, sure. So this, indeed, the Commission is very well aware that this is an issue which is of concern. We didn't deal with it specifically in this legislative proposal, because the question of patentability comes from the Biotech Directive from 1998. But obviously, we need to protect innovation, but we also need to guarantee that the technologies are accessible to breeders, including SMEs, as I've been saying, and that they don't have a negative impact on farmers and their access to diverse and affordable seeds, because that's very important for us, and that's one of the reasons as well why we proposed to do a revamp of the plant reproductive materials. So that is definitely a principle that's very important. And if NGTs are going to deliver on their full potential for sustainability and competitiveness, we have to make sure that the right balance is struck there. So the Commission has said that we will assess this question of the impact of patents on innovation in plant breeding and access to genetic material and so on, and we'll look at the competitiveness of the biotech industry overall. So we will be studying this, we'll be analysing it. We're already taking in information to see what the various stakeholders, in addition to what they've already told us, know about it, and we'll identify the challenges, and the Commission has committed as well to follow up with actions should they be necessary in the light of that analysis. Obviously, this needs to be done within a time frame which fits with the development of this proposal as well. So it's something that we will be doing relatively quickly, but it does take, of course, some time to gather the necessary information and analysis. But we recognise the point, and we will be following up with it.
What kind of actions, now without yet knowing what is actually happening, if this is an issue, what could be possible actions? Give us an example or two.
Well, I think what's been done in the past, I don't know whether it's going to be specifically relevant here, some interpretative guidelines about how the rules on patents should be applied, both in terms of the patents which are granted, but also the enforcement of the patents. I mean, that's just one example which has been used in the past. As I say, it's too early to tell whether that's the appropriate way to go forward here. But we will. There are several ideas out there. We are hearing them, and I think that's a good thing. That the stakeholders are coming now with thoughts and ideas about how to deal with this. Because, as I say, it needs proper analysis, but it also needs a response within a reasonable period of time, I think, to make sure that this framework does deliver, in particular, as far as our SMEs are concerned.
Peter, so you're clearly a proponent of innovation, but you stress that it's part of the solution. What's your take on what Claire just said?
On this whole issue of patenting and so on, I find it personally a very scary topic. So, partly because I've never been directly engaged in this issue, but there are a couple of things I do know. Well, first of all, one of the things that Claire was saying is there has to be a balance between inventors receiving an appropriate recompense for the work that they have done in their invention. There has to be a balance between that and people being able to use innovation. So that's one thought that I have. Maybe there's something I could add that's a little bit different. Patents are part of a package, a whole group of things that are called intellectual property rights. And there are different elements to this. Patenting is not just one. And sometimes, actually, by the way, I find some people get confused. A patent is for life. A patent is not for life. Okay? Patents run out at a certain stage. But there are other elements to intellectual property rights which are equally important, especially when we're talking about seeds, plant breeding. I think Claire almost mentioned it, but you have things like plant breeders' rights, which, by the way, apply equally to the organic sector, just given that we were talking about the organic sector. Plant breeders' rights are a way of recompensing breeders of plant material. I think Claire mentioned just briefly the plant reproductive material initiatives. And so all of these things are mixed up together. One thing I do agree with, you cannot mix patenting up in a proposed regulation like the one that we have been talking about. It's a different topic. There's a whole pile of law on patenting, so it should not be mixed up in something like this. But let's not forget in these conversations, you do have other things that are important in this sector, like plant breeders' rights and some of the other things, which people should not forget.
I want to turn to Christoph quickly. You will enter soon the negotiations in the parliament eventually. Anything that you've heard today from the two speakers that gives you new food for thought that might change slightly your approach, or?
Patenting is a core issue, and it's difficult to imagine to adopt this regulation with no clear answer on this issue, because there is international convention who forbid to have patent on life, and if first category is conventional plant, it should be forbid to have patent on this first category, or the inventors of these new products want to have patents. So it's a very important element, and you have a European framework to protect a breeder's interest. It does still exist, so you have to propose a clear answer on patenting. And it's another children's story. The little firm startup which will put on the market with their own intellectual property this kind of complex product. We all know how it's happening in the reality. In the reality, big firms go to the courts against the startup and they win, or they buy the startup, or they buy the technology, and they concentrate the market, and that will happen. So if you don't clearly have a solution for this question of patenting, you know what will be the end of the story.
So we've clearly opened up a can of worms, and we've run out of time just when the discussion started happening. This is obviously an issue that deserves its own session. Please don't walk away just yet, because I have clear instructions for you. The next 2 sessions will be roundtable discussions, and they will be taking place in these rooms. So if you want to go to the roundtable discussion on food sustainability, making food systems sustainable, that's in the room Salon Moulin. And if you're looking for the carbon farming one, that's at Salon Précurieux. And to get to them, you just pass by the reception, and people there will guide you. So again, making food systems sustainable, that's in the room Salon Moulin. And a soil deal for Europe, upscaling carbon farming, that's in Salon Précurieux, and that's starting soon. So again, go by the reception, and they will take you from there. Thank you, everyone.